as I briefly noted in closing out that previous segment of mutual exposure to Within Temptation's Bleed Out, for the initiation work we go to war, in looking at the name Worth Dying For, and considering directly album philosophy of a personalized empowerment journey in wrestling with present life tribulations, whatever they might look like, and this album in particular offers some specialized focuses on intended band declaration, or as well broad threads that perhaps we can adapt to suit our personalized needs, which is quite beautiful. Again, I love broad interpretation, or specialized, again, whatever the band prefers, especially when it's adeptly declared, like Within Temptation. I love this group so much. But I already sensed, again, wading in and just lightly skimming the title and lyrics, a synonymy. I also wondered as well if there would be a directed follow-up to Wireless. And just again, in what I've perused of this song on first witness, it comes across to me like Wireless as well, even though, again, there's a pointed theme of that, and there could be with this that I have not yet necessarily been familiarized to from the band. If anybody knows if there is an intended declaration of theming with specific focus to Worth Dying For, feel free to chime in down below. But I still see that broad spirit to it that makes it fit quite well with the full album resonance on message. Adeptly explored thus far in 8 works we've witnessed together, whether it happens to be on initiation status of first witness, mutual witness in fact, or reintroduction status, where 3 of these numbers took us. But we're returning back again to origin of where we set with our Within Temptation journey together via Don't Pray For Me. Pieces I've not yet welcomed into my graces we get to share in first experiences of, which makes music, as far as I'm concerned, even better to enjoy it in a collaborative manner. And always, irrespective to how we approach, whether you happen to be a longtime fan like myself or any fresh initiate listeners, and I do hope there's a general mix of you, so that some of you have not necessarily welcomed the graces Within Temptation yet. I would recommend, because we are 4 tracks in, 8 in experience, but according to album listing, we're on number 4, Worth Dying For. I would recommend you humor the first 3 pieces for yourself. Don't neglect to look at those or really any of the pieces on the album. We're doing a full album run through, and I would imagine just on Temptation, the last 3 we have to humor, including Worth Dying For, are going to be as admirable as any exposure we've had, and is adept on delivery. If you're not familiar again with Within Temptation, I'll give you just a brief summary so we're all on even footing here of approach. Dutch-based symphonic metal, and their symphonic metal prowess. Again, think atmospheric orchestral if you're not as familiarized to that particular sub-metal field. And there is great variation in metal. I know the generalized presumption from any outside listeners of metal who are not necessarily as entrenched as a lot of us are, including myself, might be that, oh, everything's harsh when you put on the metal terminology. Nope. In our exploration of European metal, we have seen great versatility, especially within symphonic metal that carries quite a range of it, whether it be, yes, on a harsher voice, and I do personally gravitate to that first, while I keep an open door to anything, as well ballad extremes, even operatic. There are so many different tones that probably at first glance, I imagine new listeners to symphonic metal will be like, wow, that's actually metal, and it is. Again, versatility Within Temptation, an admirable name, that if you've not welcomed them, this could be your first step of Worth Dying For, and we're taking that together, you and I, in terms of mutual interaction. Of course, I know because I'm late on the ball with this, any Within Temptation fans looking at this probably are like, oh, I've already heard this number, but you're getting a return journey, perhaps for yourself, with somebody who's, again, taking initiate perspective, where I wish I could have been on time with things, but it just didn't work out that way. But better late than never. I made promises, and I keep them. I told you we were going to do a full album canvas of Within Temptation, and I'm doing just that with all of you. From Bleed Out, every piece we've recognized here I've quite liked. I am sure Worth Dying For and Faith will be no different. Certainly on lyrical potency, it already strikes a beautiful and faithful chord with the remainder of the album in consideration. On music, though, let's hear which direction this goes. I mean, Within Temptation does mix up stylings from time to time, though typically with this album there's been a rock and a harsh dominance on voice. It has leaned to the harder spectrum of symphonic metal with maybe different pause breaks, tonal mixtures. Let's see how this piece is manifested, and perhaps its adaptability or linear feel. We're going to experience that together for first time witness. Here we go. Dreary opener. Kinda, a bit sci-fi too. Somewhat of a modern influence paired with a more ancient-esque return ride. Definitively modern on this one. The key choice is great, differentiated from other songs on the record. Special. Its mood is perfect on emotion. Good picture on the line. I like that writing. Well connected again into generalized philosophy here. The synthetic twinges on delivery here with this one are really nice. Woven naturally. Especially with the higher incline on them. But they change appearance too on different sections of the song. Precisely organized. It has a rough body, but it still carries him in a smooth ballad flow. I really like it. It's more so that in effect and not as much an appearance. Well, the kind of the vocals get in that shade. To be fair. The technological inclusion here is really something interesting. It's a little more ardent than it has been in past numbers. Deliberately specified. You know, I'm tempted to say this is kind of like... It has a symphonic metal origin, but it's more so kind of, at least for me, like a modern metal number on certain cues. That's kind of how it comes across to me. It might be a subjective view, but there are some intersection traits that are giving it that facade. It's a great number, though, however you look at it. Still, the symphonic essence, though, is maintained, and it's especially prominent on these softer sections. Notice the vocals. They just linger. The incline, good choice. And how long that's drawn out, too. The key really is a good fit. And it's a number of truth, isn't it? Man, the message is incredibly potent on that. And that in itself is kind of like a... Oh man, there's such a beautiful subtlety and expression of that number. Now, again, like I said, it's playing around with a lot of different extremes. I think the initiation... Let me lightly experience that again, in fact. Yes, whenever those softer verses kick in, whether it be on the initiation or even when it drifts out, or that one area, I believe, in the bridge. Notably, you see it with Sharon's repressed voice, and that is rather, it's like a light, a choir-esque effect that takes shape. That's where you really see the deliverance again of the symphonic metal voice. That's retained, and it's deliberate here, but it's suppressed a bit for, I would say, an exchange. A modernized voice, which is quite interesting though in effect because you start it and it flows really well from other pieces and into new ones. Ritual is the follow-up, and I've said before with that one there's a bit of an ancient veneer that pops up too. As we entertain Worth Dying For as it begins, we also have that similar origin, but then the synths add this touch of it being, they the fact that you have two different moods on time intermixed and they work well together, none of the synths in existence worth dying for ever come across as an interruption or an obstruction that distracts me from, again, the balance and the flow of the number, because it's naturally attuned to that immersion forthcoming, especially when it comes to the chorus sections, because that dominance is so striking there. With the way the patterns flow on certain notes, again, that elevation, and it's such a swift one too, and then it immediately drops off as soon as they hit, giving it a bit like a sci-fi edge. It's really interesting how this piece, at first you think, again, like I said, it carries off this energy of being placed a bit in time, but then certain cues within the score, because of how modern it is and how contemporary it feels, shift your attention, but yet are still placed together. I find it to be quite an interesting work on construction. Again, it brings in a lot of different tones, and modern metal has had that versatility in particular that I've seen from different groups. I've covered a good field of modern metal themed influences, which, again, within Temptation's more symphonically driven, that's how they're credited. But there are other groups that definitely, let me paint a good case here. Go look at, for example, by comparison, Volturion, Italian-based modern metal specifically, and you will see on their album Crimson, their first one, they're now on Red Dragon, or that's most present release. Crimson in particular demonstrated, with a good field of numbers, a lot of different tones. And I don't remember specifically if there was like a synth. There was in a couple of those numbers. I think in the introduction, New Life, there was too. I see versatility specifically when it comes to the modern metal extremes, that artists oftentimes will adopt a good mix of sounds on an album. That's at least, again, what I've witnessed personally. I see a track here with Event Temptation that does depart, again, from normality of expectancy with Bleed Out, where you think it's going to be either, I've said more so, this is, I would say, a symphonic metal and heavy metal pairing. At least on, again, influence of the riffs is why I credit heavy metal in that direction. And I look at a number that, like, Worth Dying For, and I see a specialized expansion. Again, each number in some way I found to be individualized on score, or even less lyrical explanation, because I do kind of fall closely in line, even though some are maybe a little more specialized than others on particular focus of subject matter. Instrumentally, though, Worth Dying For, I would call an expanse that does take a footing into a modern metal extreme, notably, again, with the electronic synth dominance, which has been, again, existent on Bleed Out, but it's been assertive on those other numbers, but the way it's manifested here, it feels intentionally directed, fascinatingly integrated, again, based on where your sentiments go on belief with this song as you begin it. But it lingers quite well, and the vocals too are, again, fantastic. Sharon, always an expectation of her, and she always delivers, right? To whatever extreme, again, the song might floats, and this is a bit softer, I would say. Again, that's what's so interesting about this number. It comes off as a mix between harsh and ballad. And it's notably, I think, the vocals that give it that cue. And yeah, how the foundation to the score drifts a bit, like in the chorus sections. Certain notes and particular patterns of measures feel held. It's not a staccato, fast-paced departure, right? Just getting to the next note, which is fine, but this one takes its time. It proceeds, even though, again, there is a roughened back and support. So it feels faithful to Bleed Out, and in harmony with it on musical delivery, it does feel slightly independent. It's a good work, though. And, of course, on narrative subject view, in context to the entirety of Bleed Out, equally potent. Those chorus sections, when it's worth dying for, you would give up all, because in the end, now you finally see it sets you free. Perfectly in tune of a personal empowerment journey. Directly stated, incredibly relevant, approachable for anybody. Even if you're not necessarily first and foremost a metal fan. Worth Dying For, I think, has the capability to appeal to a broad audience, as Event Temptation does. Again, symphonic metal has, I think, a particular reach that I might immediately gravitate to it, but any new initiate metal encounters, because of how spread around it is in terms of inclusion, and what it might also welcome, again, on adjacent metal styles, but not as directly interwoven. Again, modern metal specifically, I get a real direct vibe of that here. I could see Worth Dying For being an immediate attractant within Temptation specifically, and some of the numbers on this record, I think, have a greater capability of that to appeal to a non-metal favorited audience. might at least welcome one or two exceptions and then might become eventual metal listeners. Who knows? Everybody's journey is different, but I hope some of the groups I recognize here have a wider pull. I know of Temptation, of course, is a substantial fan base, of which I feel quite grateful to be in the company of all of you, quite honored to be recognizing their abilities, and hopefully, in some way, forging roots for new listeners. Do any of you have that angle worth dying for? Does this piece from Event Temptation lure you in? And it's a reel you should follow. We're going to expand on that with the last two numbers we've not yet welcomed the graces of in terms of a mutual journey. Certainly for myself, I've held out this long to enjoy it with you. Bleed Out is best enjoyed that way, I think, collaboratively with other listeners. And however you approach to this, longtime fan or initiate perspective, I'd love to hear your opinions on this piece. I find it to be quite an adventurous tune on the library of Bleed Out, but a welcome one, with the expected prowess of a group that I deeply revere, and that also expands my perspective. To see this versatility demonstrated in particular with this work, notably again with a synth influence and a bit of a different metal styling, again, apart from the symphonic, this one interweaves a good mixture of voice that puts it in a bit of a specialized regard for me. And again, the way we originate, I have to consider again that hybrid between different moods that shift between modern and ancient on veneer. That's really interesting. Again, it's such a mysterious blend, but it's one that's incredibly satisfactory and rewarding, and the key choice too, perfect. I can't wait to hear more. But Worth Dying For is one that I will continue to have in my mind. That struck me immediately again, in particular with that key, and the way the number evolves. I really like it as a memory. I can't wait to repeat the experience again. I would imagine some of you, of course, would concur in that. It's a number with a lot of potential. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.